Why? Because he knows that he's doomed. He knows that God will fully punish him for his actions at the appointed time. So why not create as much grief for God and mankind until the end that he possibly can? This is Lucifer's heart of hatred. Okay, so far Revelation 12, 1 through 6 has told us about chronological order, and it has shown us that Lucifer himself is a violent predator. The third thing about this short prophecy that we need to know is the timely setting. Timely setting. Verses 1 through 6 span approximately 1,800 years. It begins shortly before Christ is born. The woman is pregnant, and Jesus is born in 4 BC. And the prophecy ends in 1798. That's at the end of the 1,260-day years that the woman spends in the desert. So this prophecy is about 1,800 years in length. The events are in chronological order. We know its location in history, and we know that Lucifer is a predator. How can we know for sure that this prophecy ended in 1798? How do we know that the 1,260 days ended in 1798? Well, if you remember our study on Daniel 7, you should recall 3 important facts. First, the little horn that arose from the 4th beast, and the 4th beast represented the Roman Empire. The little horn that came out of the Roman Empire was the Roman Catholic Church. This conclusion is beyond reasonable argument when all of the specifications given in Daniel 7 are examined and historically compared. Number 2, Daniel 7:25 indicates the little horn, that is the Roman Catholic Church, would uproot 3 horns and persecute the saints for a time, times, and half a time. According to Rule 4, which has to do with the translation of timing, the Jubilee calendar forces a time, times, and half a time to equal 1,260 years. I'm not going to go through that here. We covered that very thoroughly in Daniel 7, our study there. But incidentally, in case you just want some really hard evidence, if you will look at Revelation 12:6 and verse 14, you will discover that the Bible clearly confirms that the 1,260 days in verse 6 equals a time, times, and half a time in verse 14, and also Daniel 7:25. But if there's any lingering doubt, take a look at history itself. History confirms that in AD 533, the Roman Emperor Justinian gave the Pope the authority to determine who could belong and who could not belong to the Holy Roman Empire. 5 years later, in 538, the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, and the Vandals, 3 tribal nations who disagreed with the church on the origin of Christ. These 3 tribal nations that were part of the original 10 kingdoms that divided the pagan Roman Empire in 476, they were destroyed by 538, and the Holy Roman Empire functioned without theological impediment thereafter. 1,260 years later, in 1798, the Holy Roman Empire collapsed during the French Revolution, and the authority of the Church of Rome over the governments of Europe was finally broken in February 1798. Since Revelation 12:6 tells us the devil chased the woman, that is, the saints, to the desert for 1260 years, it becomes obvious that Daniel 7:25 and Revelation 12:6 point to the very same period of persecution. For two reasons. A, this time frame is so large that there is no other place for it. You can't move 1,260 years around very well in history. But if that's not enough, the specifications in both prophecies produce the same result. Here's the point. If you can understand how the devil himself used a demon-possessed man in his attempt to kill baby Jesus, then you should be able to understand how the devil used evil men within the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church to persecute and destroy the saints for 1260 years. You should be able to see the parallel very easily. It's as simple as predatory violence. Once it became politically powerful as the corrector of heretics, the church became a predator against anyone who challenged its teachings or authority. The story of the Christian church parallels the story of Israel in many ways, with respect to those who love truth, because in both cases, the persecuted eventually became the persecutor. The church was supposed to exalt faith in and love for Jesus Christ, but it became focused on growth and acceptance, popularity. And over time, that morphed into a need for political influence and control. And eventually, that morphed into the need for absolute power. By AD 538, the Roman Catholic Church had absolute power. We have examined these things because it is imperative that you understand the relationship between these two prophecies. The short one in Revelation 12:1 through 6, and the longer one in Revelation 12:7 through 14:5. The short one is a prophecy of Lucifer versus God, and the long one is a prophecy of Lucifer versus the woman. Why is it important to understand these two prophecies? Simple. The methods of Lucifer are very surprising and clever, as you are about to see today. The real problem is that the human point of view is inadequate. That's why God put these matters in the Bible. He wants us to see more and understand more about life than the naked eye can see. Lucifer preyed upon Jesus as an infant using a demon-possessed man. Then Lucifer preyed upon the saints for 1260 years using a church full of demon-possessed men. The surprising thing about this story is how Lucifer cleverly used the church visible, to persecute the saints, or the church invisible. Now that you're beginning to understand these things, let's go to the longer prophecy, Lucifer versus the woman. We're going to start reading with Revelation 12:7. The Bible says, and there was war in heaven. Okay, each apocalyptic prophecy has a beginning point in time. And one of the questions we must ask is, when did this war occur? The Bible just says at verse 7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Now, do you suppose that verse 7 happened